So here we are right here, talking about the southeastern Native Americans. The tribes that you would see in the southeast. These tribes were persecuted throughout the 1800s, throughout the course of post-European exploration. So after the Europeans came to North America, you had the Cherokee, the Choctaw, Chickasaw and Creek, and the Seminole, the Natchez, the Caddo, and the Yamasee. The Seminole, they take pride in the fact that they are the only Native American tribe that never formally surrendered to the United States government. So that's pretty cool. Location, where could you find southeastern Native Americans? Well, in the southeast, in the state of Georgia, South Carolina, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana. But for all intents and purposes, the Seminole lived in the southeast. They lived in Florida, synonymous with the Everglades, marshes, swamps, wetlands. It was sticky, it was moist, mucky. That's just the way it was there. But they became experts at learning the land that they lived in. So they used their environment to meet their needs for food, clothing, and shelter. But the climate didn't participate often. It was hot and humid in the summer. It was mild in the winter. You rarely would see snow, if ever, in Florida and in the southeast. Around 60 inches of rain annually. So there was a good bit of precipitation here. So it allowed them to farm if they could, especially in the 1800s when the Seminole were thriving, I guess, if that's what you can say, in Florida before they started fighting and warring in the Seminole Wars with the federal United States government. So let's talk about some of the natural resources that you find. Down in Florida, where the Seminole lived, you would have palmetto trees, water, grasses, mosses, earth, like, dude, like, I live on planet Earth. No, earth is like another name for soil. Rivers, wood, and rocks. And you're thinking, like, I have rocks in my yard and I don't do anything with them? Like, okay, so they would use rocks to make tools. They would use rocks as a method of hunting. What kind of clothes did they wear? Well, you had skirts, blouses, shawls, which is like it's like something you throw over your shoulder, shirts, pants, cloth. Well, they, coming from Georgia, there were some at the time when the Seminole were forced into Florida. There was some cotton that was being grown, but not as much up into the Civil War, where slave labor actually was responsible for the development of a lot of the cotton that was grown. The Seminole were actually a group of Native Americans and runaway slaves that kind of intermingled and hung out together because, both of them were persecuted and forced out of the early United States. So the Seminole kind of came together a lot later than all of the other Native American tribes that I've been talking about. Shelter, chickee. No, not like a chicken chickee. No, we're talking about a chickee, okay? A chickee is a raised platform designed to keep people out of the water. It was designed to keep alligators, snakes, and other swamp predators out. There were no walls in a chickee. It's kind of like what you'd see at the beach. It's kind of like a tiki hut. The chickee was easy to put together, easy to take apart. Culture, singing, dancing, songs, songwriting, religion, knitting, ceremonies. Okay, transportation. Well, since you're in the swamp in Florida and in the southeast, you would walk predominantly because you didn't have horses domesticated at the time, and you didn't have automobiles. So what you have boats to get you around in the swamps. Physical features: Everglades, marshes, swamps, wetlands, flatland, forests, and river valleys. Lots of opportunities to fish. Fish was a large part of their diet, and to hunt because the land was flat. Farming. They grew corn, they grew beans, they grew squash, they grew pumpkins, they grew wild rice. But the cool thing is what they gathered. Now, if you know anything about gathering, you get things that you wouldn't normally grow yourself, but these are things you stumble upon or you're looking for as you're hunting and as you're farming. So there are oranges, grapefruit, lemons. Then they would gather nuts, seeds, bulbs, berries, and mushrooms. Yes, mushrooms. But Native Americans, over the course of time, they developed a sense of which plants were good to eat, which plants were not good to eat, and they tried to meet their needs and they knew what they needed to complement their diet. So they couldn't eat just rabbit or just possum or just squirrel. And so they knew what they needed to meet their needs for food, clothing, and shelter. They were experts at knowing their environment, looking around them, using their natural resources to make sure that they lived comfortably, even though they were running away from the United States government. But they made their time in Florida very worthwhile and memorable, and they fought valiantly with the United States government.